Hey guys, Deadline TV, Ben Vidgen, editor of the Deadline magazine. Also do Ben's New Zealand and write a couple of books. You want my full CV, what I've done and what my qualifications are, go to my website, which is simply the postmanproductions.wordpress.com Deadline TV, and you can go and find all that stuff out. Last issue on the road to Washington 2020, we talked a lot about the corporate predatory steps which are taken for the next phase of the TPPA, which is about reactivating the currently suspended investment settlement dispute. ISDS, it gets to me every time. You know what I mean. Go and Google it. But basically, we looked at all those steps. I just want to take part two, and I want to kind of take you back to some events happening early in the year to show you why that very much is a part two, and that we can very much expect to see the United States of America rejoin the TPPA, and if they do, that will mean the reinstatement of that clause which gives corporations the right to sue us. Also ties in very much to the other part of this bill, which I'll mention very, very briefly. It's a little bit off topic, but it's one of the very first things that is sort of, the ratification which happens on the TPPA on December 30th period. Was one of the very first things they're going to be dealing with is the whole issue of intellectual property rights. I've done a little bit of reading on this morning because there's been a few things been clicking in my head. Bit of a worry, that one, guys, because Article 18, just like this new UN migrant policy that's actually rolling out, amongst it, it talks a lot about the censorship of the media, saying that basically when these things come together, they've got plans kept in place to stop people like me telling you this. One of the most obvious ones that I can point out to you is, the current way that the internet is monitored, the vulnerable property rights and so on, is it's pretty fair. At the end of the day, you can't turn around if you're a big national party playing an Eminem song, you will get things. But if you're a little activist out there and you've got a bit of music going on in the background, no one really cares. It's sensible. But not under the new ratification. In actual fact, I've always seen cases today looking online where TPA protesters have been blocked in the country, and the only reason they've been blocked, when you read the fine print, is, guess what? Bob Marley was playing in the background, and that was suffice. I've also seen, I think, Carol Sawyer from Ban 1080 show me cases where the ODT had turned around and tried to send a bill for using photos that she shared on 1080. Originally, those photos belonged to the Otago Daily Times, or they took the photos, but they've been shared so many times that the claim that they're actually private property is ridiculous. But again, not on the TPPA. So that's going to be a very, very powerful tool to censor us. That's also going to be combined with legislation in existence already to basically turn around and permit corporations to come in and define what's real news and what not. Now, and I know a lot of you guys out there think, oh no, there's too much fake news out there. Well, look, this is my stance on that very, very issue. I've been a journalist for 20 years. If something's fake, someone can sue you for defamation. There are very, very strong laws out there which permit this. Now, take it to court if you think it's fake. On the other hand, let's leave the public, we the people, let's judge their intelligence. Give them time to evolve, to learn media, peer review, and all things which maybe you don't necessarily have if you're not at a academic level. But let people decide this. The idea of letting corporations decide what's real and what not, it runs my blood cold. But yet, that's part of this process that's going on. But let's bring it back. Let's bring it back to some of the things that happened this year, early year. The biggest one was when Obama flew down to New Zealand. Now, at the time, our New Zealand media, God bless their deep, intellectually thought-provoking minds, gush, oh my God, Obama's here, it's beautiful, fantastic, fantastic. Oh, they didn't even tell us what he was here for. Some talks, and there were going to be some things about women, and there was lots of mentions about the word Taini, Toroa, and but anyway, they played golf with John Key, how fantastic. But there was no attempt to really find out what actually occurred. Well, I did to the best of my ability, being based down in the South Island, the meeting was up in Auckland, dug a little deep in them, and I found a couple of things. First thing was that meeting was actually organised by the New Zealand US Business Council. Now that organisation is very important because it was a political action group set up in 2012, I think as an arm of the US Chamber of Commerce, to directly lobby New Zealand to make sure we join the TPPA. So that meeting was actually instigated by the lobbying group of the TPPA. So that we shouldn't leave it to the TPA is a big, big mistake. Then, of course, to back that up, as you notice that his itinerary went from America to, I think it was Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, Malaysia, Japan. In other words, he visited every single country that is part of the 11 member state nations on his tour, or most of them. So again, that's a fairly big giveaway that this was a TPPA related issue. Then there was also the issue of the fact that a lot of the people that were invited to that meeting were very much from the corporate sector. And effectively, he was rolling out to them about what he was going to do for their interests, their neoliberal globalism interests, if, you know, if they played the game. Because New Zealand's been a very important part. And I think, you know, I saw that this from my reading of it, it wasn't just an issue of him coming down to play golf in a good situation. I think basically Obama was here very much as part of lobbying for the next candidate for the 2020. And before I explain why, I'll also point out this is not new. Previously, the Clinton Foundation did this as well, and of course, what we now know from thanks to WikiLeaks and the Panama Papers and other investigative reporters was that a lot of money that was actually donated to the Clinton Foundation never went to charities. It was actually used as a political slush fund to get the Clintons' nominees re-elected. Now, in New Zealand, we donated, not only did we donate $14.3 million directly from the New Zealand government, but John Key actually changed the tax laws in 2009 to make it so that anyone donating to charities, whether it's Brian Tam, again, think about that one, or a corporation could get a 30% rebate basically off their charity. Now, if you're donating to a charity that's actually not giving to the people, basically it's actually a laundering situation. So they'll use it not only to launder money, but also as a means of a slush fund to help support the Clinton, campaign. So when we turn around and see similar steps taking back here in New Zealand, following the same kind of schmoozing steps, you're kind of going, oh yeah, okay, I see what you're doing. You're not only running around trying to say what you'll do with TPA, but you're beating the donate to us, donate to us. And I'll go back to that 2009 issue. There was a follow-up to that because there is a chap that I know, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he is in a very well-known band called the Axle Grinders. And if you go to his blog, because it's out there as well, he'll confirm that when he was working as the ID, he started noticing all this volume of donations being made into the ID that were the same people that were donating to a very powerful organisation with strong American political connections. I can't say anything other than that, because that's exactly what he told me. He wouldn't say who that organisation was, because he's actually a very ethical person and wouldn't breach his confidentiality. But he was so alarmed, he took it to his bosses, and they said, no, we don't want to hear about it. So he then contacted his friend who was the janitor of the building ID, made sure that no one was in the particular building at that night when he chose to take his next step, which was he drove his car into the ID building. When I say drove, he kind of tapped the window very gently and forced the window in and drove in. Now he thought, being a lovely guy, that the media would rush out of it, all ask about what was happening and blah, 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 and he'd get to expose this huge corruption of all these charities being laundered through New Zealand to a big, powerful American entity. No, it just appeared in the newspapers as a disgruntled ID employee. So we never got to find out why he actually drove the vehicle in, but, it's actually on its own site, the Axle Grinders, so go and have a look if you don't believe me. That can be documented. So, again, we see another meeting very similar to what we saw with the Clintons coming to New Zealand. It's been organised by the US New Zealand Business Council, which we know is a TPA organisation. The Obama is from there, going around visiting all the other TPA-related companies. And as I said, also another interesting thing was a lot of buzzword I'm seeing coming out of the American political machine at the moment always makes reference to women's rights. Now, I don't actually have a problem with that because, let's face it, there is a little bit of the playing field needs to be levelled out there. What my issue is when you start hearing the same words used again. As a journalist, I don't hear someone saying something, oh, this is a righteous cause. I hear someone using a spin doctor tactic to push through an agenda. Now, in this case, what happened was around Obama was there was this mention of this word, Fanny Puroa, powerful woman, and Obama was very, very keen to meet the Tani sorry, guys, a little bit of mispronunciation. Very keen to meet these powerful Maori women. Now, this word also would come up down the road when Hillary Clinton visited 2 months later. I'll come to that in a second. But I was very interested when I started to see this thing. I hear the same words being used. So what I actually turned around and looked at, and already recognising that females were going to be the word that was going to be the magic button for the next election campaign in 2020. But what was also very interesting was that when I went to the US Embassy's own website, they'd actually been pushing this particular buzzword since 2016, Project Tani Kuroa. And basically it's about approaching women within the Maori world and you know, forming relationships. Now that wouldn't be such a bad thing as well. Again, it sounds on the surface quite great. You know, it's, Obama as a person, individually, I think there's a lot of wonderful things about him. But I'm not talking about the individual or the surface politics. I'm talking about the bigger picture. And what we saw with all these women in this situation was the fact that they were all, the common denominator was they all had access to iwi finances. And that was the key thing for me, was it wasn't just our meeting women, it our meeting women with checkbooks. Then again, same situation when we turn around, we start looking at who was at the golf courses on John Key. We see a lot of the same people that Craig Heatley, Chris Luxon, and now there's a name to remember. I believe in 8 minutes into the Obama meeting, it was actually announced that John Luxon will be running as the candidate for the National Party in 2020. I suspect if he doesn't run directly for that seat, he will be coming as a list campaign, just like Jacinda Ardern, or put in a safe seat, just like John Key. But the key, it's clear that they're planning to fast track Chris Luxon, and he's going to be basically national answer to the cult of personality that is Jacinda Ardern. All of these things, however, what also clear, however, to be fair, I've been pretty hard on the Jacinda Ardern government, but what's also very interesting about that meeting was who was invited, who wasn't. Shane Jones did a big, huge beep, 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 I hate you, New Zealand, rah, 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 rah. But, you know, as usual, New Zealand First says one thing, but, you know, he was invited because when you look at New Zealand First lobby, it's all Peter Tullies, it's all tobacco, da-da-da, usual suspects. So Shane Jones was invited. Jacinda Ardern actually wasn't. So I think the basic plan is if America would actually turn around and get rid of Trump, have a national, basically, candidate in, then yay, it'll be so much easier to get America back into the TPPA and get those annoyingly unconstitutional ISDS clauses reinstated. So that's what I think is the game plan for the next 3 years as they try to move forward. I'm sure very briefly tied up with again saying it wasn't just Obama that came down here. As a symbol of the strength of lobbying that was going on, 2 months later we saw Hillary Clinton come down here as well. And again, she was going around to Australia in the same places where Obama was. So they were on the campaign trail. And you've got a correlation, all of this activity, not just with what was happening here in New Zealand. You've also got to turn around and look at things of what were happening in the States in terms of, we started to see the Obamas raise the profile of Michelle Barak and Hillary. And basically, and what's unusual about that is the usual protocol in American politics is that when a president finishes their terms, it's normally considered kind of a form of politeness that they actually leave the Beltway or the Washington DC area. It's kind of a symbol saying, oh, we relinquish power to the new Commander-in-Chief. That's not what's actually happening in the United States. We've seen very much that both the Hillarys and the Baraks have stayed close to Washington. They've stayed close to the primary candidacies such as New Hampshire and the New York area. So what it's signifying for me is that there is definitely going to be a female candidate. I can't quite narrow it down who it's going to be yet, but that candidate will be pushing forward an agenda which from our viewpoint will see America reinstated into the TPPA and see those clauses which allow corporations to sue our governments. It will be turned around saying, no, you can't have our water, no, you can't pollute our rivers. So the fight is by far not over. We've got a lot of work to get done, and we need to be starting to get a little bit ahead of what are their legal steps that they are planning to do to try and manipulate the game so that they can actually cross the T's and dot their I's. Thank you very much. You've been watching Deadline TV with Vidgen.